Uh, Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Neha Hamilton, and today we are going to understand and we are going to study the second thing, which is called as research methods. So, we have already discussed what is research, the meaning of research, the concept of research in the last class. And today we are going to understand that what are the specific methods through which you can do a particular research or you can actually execute research, right? So, what is the process through which you go through that we are going to understand in the next class. But right now, it is important to understand the methods of research. I mean, how to go about it, how to collect data, what is the right method of collecting data. These all questions are going to be answered in this slide, in this session. So, the learning objectives are clearly to find out the ways of doing a particular research. What are the ways or what are the means through which you can do a particular research? These are the learning objectives that we are going to understand in research methods. And these are basically the learning objectives. So let me write it down, the learning objectives. The most and the basic research learning objective of this slide is to understand the methods of research, and the second one is to analyze the best way of doing research, right? These are the two prime learning objectives that we are going to cover in this class. So now this diagram, as you can see, I hope this is visible on your screen. This diagram is very, very important. This answers the question of what is research method and what are the various approaches. So whenever we talk about research methods, there are basically two approaches. The first is called as qualitative method and the second is called as quantitative method. Now, as the name suggests, qualitative method is something which is uh, in which quality is involved, right? And quantitative method is something in which uh, numbers are involved, figures are involved, statistics are involved, and all those kind of things are involved, right? So if you are watching this lecture right now, I will highly recommend you to draw this diagram in your copies, because if you draw this diagram, you will get a complete picture of uh, uh, what this is all about and what are the things which are important to answer the question of research, right? So qualitative, quantitative, right? And then we have, in when we talk about qualitative methods, we have like interview method, we have focus group method, we have ethnographic research, we have case study method, right? And when we talk about quantitative research, we have inferential method, we have experimental research method, and we have simulation method. So there are lots and lots of different methods through which we can do a particular kind of research. What are the two basic approaches? It is either quantitative or it is either qualitative, right? When I talk about quantitative, I'm talking about statistics, I'm talking about numbers, I'm talking about figures, I'm talking about statistical analysis. When I talk about quantitative, I'm talking about theory, evidences, that helps you to generate inference. Okay, so after that, now let's move on to the next slide. Yes, so same description is written. Research methods are broadly classified into qualitative methods and quantitative methods. Both methods have distinctive properties and data collection methods. Now, let us first start with qualitative methods. So, what is written here in the slide, that both the methods have distinctive data collected data collection styles, right? So quantitative method is a method that collects data using conversational methods. So participants are asked open-ended questions. Now, see, conversational, when I talk about conversational method, I am talking about a unstructured method. A unstructured method in which you the conversation can go in any direction. For example, you are taking an interview, so you do have a proper set of questions, but the interview can go in any direction depending on the of the interest of the people who are interested in the and the people who are taking interest in that particular interview, right? So that is called as qualitative method. Okay, so that's why it is called conversational method. Participants are asked open-ended questions. Now there are two types of questions that you need to understand. The first are called as open-ended questions, and the second one is called as closed-ended questions. So when I talk about open-ended questions, see, open-ended questions are basically questions in which we are not restricting the respondent, right? We are giving him uh, a lot of space, a lot of scope to answer that question. So that is called as open-ended question. When you have very compartmentalized answers on a particular question, so that is called as closed-ended questions. But one thing that you have to keep in mind is whenever we are talking about qualitative methods, we are taking a vast data. When we are taking a vast data, then it is very important to collect a lot of information. Now, how do you get this lot of information? You get this lot of information with the help of open-ended questions. So it is concerned with subjective assessment of attitudes, opinions, and behavior. See, these three things that we are talking about, attitudes, opinions, and behaviors, this basically is something that you cannot quantify. Right? For example, can you quantify the attitude of somebody? Right? I can say that yes, your attitude is good or your attitude is bad. Let's say, for example, attitude towards health. Okay, so your attitude towards health is very casual. You eat whatever you want. You do not eat healthy food, or your attitude towards your health is very focused. You are very specific of the total number of calories you eat. How do you maintain your health? So your attitude is very focused and good, or it can be casual. But you cannot quantify that your attitude is 2% good or 20% good or 30% good or 100%. You cannot do that, right? Why you cannot do that? Because attitude is something you cannot measure. Right? Now let's talk about the second term, opinion, right? I have a positive opinion about somebody. I can have a negative opinion about somebody, but you cannot, you know, measure it. You cannot give percentage for a particular opinion, right? In the same way, your behavior can be good, it can be bad, it can be very good, it can be very bad, but it cannot be 30% good, 40%. How will you quantify that? You cannot quantify that. So these are the areas in which qualitative research is being used, right? So these are the areas, specific areas where we use basically the quantitative research, right? So please keep in mind that whenever we are talking about the qualitative methods, we are talking about the conversational methods, we are talking about the open-ended questions and things like that we are doing. Now let's move to the next slide. I hope it is visible. The types of qualitative methods. Now, once we have understood what is qualitative methods, there are certain factors that we cannot measure. If we cannot measure any factor, it is important to um, quantify it in some way, right? So we try to quantify it. We do have certain scales in research. For example, we have liquid scale, and we do have various kind of scales through which um, we can study these kind of methods. So the first is the interview is conducted with one participant in at a given point of time. One-to-one interview, right? One-to-one interview, for example, you are doing a research on Indian politics, international relations with France, international relations with Russia, international relations with any specific country you are studying. You cannot take data from public, normal public, general public. You cannot do that. So, what you need to do is you basically need to find out a specific person who is expert in that particular area. You have to go to that particular person. You have to ask some questions, right? So that is called as one-to-one interview. So what is one-to-one interview? When you are asking questions specifically to a specific individual who is expert in that particular area to gain more and more information, as much information as you can get, right? So that is called as one-to-one interview. The researcher asks only questions specific to that particular area and gain more and more information as much as possible. So that is called as one-to-one interview. Half an hour. I hope the recording is still on. I hope it is going on. Okay. So, right. So we were talking about one-to-one interview and why one-to-one interview is important and how one-to-one interview is going to help us in the form of any kind of qualitative research. Okay, so what is written? Let us read this. The researcher asks the most important question to the participant. This type of interview lasts anywhere between 20 minutes to half an hour, and during this time, the researcher collects as many meaningful answers as possible from the participants to draw inferences, right? So this is very important, which is one-to-one interview. Now let's move to the next slide. Yes. So next is focus groups. Now, what are focus groups? We need to understand what are focus groups. So if I ask you focus group, have you heard of this term before? How will you answer this question? Okay. So uh, how will we answer this question? Uh, Basically, as the name suggests, focus group means these are the small groups which are comprising of 6 to 10 participants who are usually expert in the subject matter. So a moderator is assigned, and you know who is a moderator? A moderator is somebody who takes care of a particular thing. He takes care of a particular group discussion. A moderator experiences in conducting the focus group play an important part. An experienced moderator can probe the participant by asking the correct question that will help them collect a sizable amount of information related to the research. So in focus group, we are only concentrating on the 6 to 10 uh, participants who are actually taking part in research. Okay, so that is focus groups. What are focus groups? So in focus groups, we have 6 to 10 participants who are experts in that particular field. We make them sit in a particular area. We ask them a particular question and we tell them that this thing is important. An experienced moderator can probe the participants by asking the correct questions that will help them collect a sizable amount of information relating to this research. So focus groups plays a very important part, when it comes to research, uh, when it comes to answering the questions, because they all are expert and they know how to answer the question. They know how to um, go through a particular problem, right? So we ask them, they themselves discuss, we find out the conclusion. I mean, what are the basic findings, and these are the all things. Okay, so that is the basic motive of focus groups. Next is ethnographic research. So again, we have to keep in mind that what are we studying? We are studying the qualitative methods of research. What is the qualitative method of research? When we cannot actually understand, or when we cannot actually understand or justify or quantify the variable that we are studying. These kind of variables can be, for example, uh, these kind of variables can be, for example, opinions, attitudes that we have already studied. Okay, so the first method that we have studied is called as one-to-one interview. The second is focus groups. Now let us come to the next variable. The next type of method is called as ethnographic research, right? So, what is this ethnographic research? It is a branch of anthropology that involves trying to understand how people actually live their life. I mean, what is the method through which uh, they uh, you what is the method through which they collect the data of a particular research. So, how do they go about it? How do they go about it? They basically, the basic method in ethnographic research is that they, study the behavioral changes in a particular individual, right? They study the behavioral changes in the individual and workplace, industrial, organizational. See, nowadays, every organization has a lot of diversity in the workforce. You will have people working from different ethnicity. You will have people who are working from different age groups, different generations, different kind of religion, different kind of geographical areas. You have a lot of differences when it comes to offices, workplace, etc., etc. But if you want to understand how do you go about this kind of a research, so this is called as ethnographic research. You are understanding the behavior of people, how do people live, and how their behavior influences their professional behavior. This is basically what we need to study in ethnographic research. Workplace, industrial, organizational ethnographies, they provide in-depth description on a wide range of topics within the field of management and organization, such as managerial action, organizational cultures, interactions of professional groups, work behavior, co-worker relation, and emotional emotional labor. So all these things are being answered only because we do ethnographic research. We have different methods. We do in-depth study. We do in-detail study. We go for interview methods. We do a lot of things in order to understand the ethnographic research. Let's move to the next slide. Again, let me remind you, what are we studying? We are studying the methods of research, and now we have studied qualitative research, right? We have studied some methods like, what are the methods? If I ask you, can you write it down on a piece of paper? The methods that we have already studied. Giving you 2 minutes of time. Please write it down, the methods that we have already studied. Okay. So, what is text analysis? It is a little different from other qualitative methods that it is used to analyze social constructs by decoding the words through any available form of document. The researcher studies and understands the context in which documents are written and then tries to draw meaningful inferences from it. Researchers today follow activities on social media platforms to try and understand the pattern of thought. See, it is very important to understand the pattern of thought of a particular individual. Now, how do you understand the thinking process, or what is the thought process of a particular individual? You can understand a particular individual by reading what he's writing where, on the various platforms, maybe on social media, maybe on different kind of websites, maybe on his own personal social media account, right? Through that writing, you can decode what is going on in the mind of the individual, right? So text analysis is a very, very important method that's being used, and it is basically used to decode whatever is going on in the mind or psychological context of a particular individual, right? Then we have a case study method. Case study method क्या होता है? Case study is essentially an intensive investigation of a particular unit under consideration. The objective is to locate the factors that account for the behavioral patterns of the given unit as an integrated totality. Try to understand what was written. This type of research is used in fields like educational sectors and philosophical studies, psychological studies, and this method involves a deep dive into ongoing research and collecting data. Now, impact of increasing levels of multiculturalism on marketing practices. The case of McDonald's, Indonesia. So after text analysis, see, let me give you an example of text analysis. For example, a lot of people are studying, the sentiments which are going on in the mind of this terrorist, or maybe what is their next kind of a move. So the investigation agencies, they check the social media accounts, they tag the calls, and whatever they are saying, maybe in coded words or whatever they are writing, from that you can estimate that what is going to be next. So their text analysis is useful. Now, when I talk about case study here, you only specifically talk about a single organization, and whatever result comes in, right? You generalize that result as a conclusion to the next um, in the rest of the organization. For example, if you are studying a fast food industry, you are studying McDonald's, right? So what you are doing is you are whatever the conclusions that are come from McDonald's, you are going to generalize those conclusions in all the fast food industry, or all the giants, all the fast food giants, right? So that is called as case study method. Now, now we have started with quantitative research. Okay, I hope you can see the next slide also, which is quantitative research. So, what is quantitative research and what are quantitative research methods? So, quantitative method deal with numbers and measurable forms, and it uses systematic way of investigating events or data. And it is used to answer questions in the term of justifying relationship with measurable variables to either explain, predict, or control a phenomenon. There are three methods that are often used by researchers, right? So, what do we do in survey research method? In qualitative research methods, basically, in quantitative methods, we deal with numbers, we deal with measurable forms, and we deal with uh, you know numbers, statistics, and we want to calculate the exact figures in this. So, in survey research, the ultimate goal is to learn about a large population by deploying a survey. Today, online surveys are popular as they are convenient and can be sent in a mail. A researcher designs a survey with the most relevant survey questions and distribute the survey. So, once the researcher receives the responses, they summarize to tabulate meaningful data and findings. So, what do we do in this meaningful survey research? We collect the data and we try to analyze that data. We transfer the data which is collected through survey method into a particular uh, kind of a Excel sheet. We transfer the data from the survey to the Excel sheet, and then we uh, analyze that data. We apply certain tests, and through those tests, we can find out uh, what can be the conclusions or what can be the results from that particular. So survey is basically used for large population. You want to do a survey on Indian population or Rajasthan population. So we have 130 crore people who are living in India, right? So even if you do a research on 1 crore people, 50,000 people, I think survey research is the best method where you add very limited amount of questions and you will be able to broadly identify the opinion of these large number of people because you are sending the survey forms to them. You are collecting the survey forms from them and you are collecting information on what is being useful and what is not being useful, right? Next method is called as experimental research. So what is this experimental research again? See, experimental research, as the name suggests, experimental research is basically it has greater control on the research environment. Some variables are manipulated to observe the effect of other variables. What is the relationship between typing speed and background noise, right? So this is the experimental research. We have clear cut two variables. We are studying the relationship between two variables, right? So, like, what are the two variables here? The first variable is typing speed, and the second variable is the background noise, right? These are the two variables that we are studying. So, in experimental research, we are studying the relationship between these two variables, the typing speed and the background noise. Again, what is experimental research? Experimental research is basically that kind of research in which some kind of a medical research is involved, some kind of a scientific study is involved, or some kind of a uh, specific studies involved where two variables are being used. Okay, so the next method that we are going to use is called as simulation research. So this is the last method that we are going to study, which is called as simulation research. Construction of artificial environment where relevant data can be generated. A flight simulator is an obvious example of a commonly used simulation for assessing behavior, but there are now a surprising variety of different simulators, all aimed at measuring responses in high fidelity environments. So, what is the simulation research basically? See, in simulation research, we are basically understanding that how the things are going to work in the real environment. Because, for example, the pilots, when we send them for training, we cannot directly send them to fly a aeroplane or a training like that. We have various kind of simulators, and these simulators help them to identify the real life challenges they are going to study in that, right? In the same way, astronauts, they are sent to zero gravity artificially created zones so they can experience, what kind of challenges they can face there. A different kind of challenges are given to them, so we can assess and identify that how the person is reacting. Is he fit to do the job? How- And research can be done on what can be the challenges and how to deal with these challenges. These type of things can be shown, or these kind of things can be available, right? So that is called as simulation research, which is construction of artificial environment where the relevant data can be generated. Sometimes it is very costly, it takes a lot of cost to go to that particular area and collect the information, right? For example, it is very costly to go to space. But if we create an artificial environment which is equivalent to space here on the earth, I think it is much cost effective, right? We are saving lives also, we are saving time also, we are saving money also, and we are collecting information on this simulation research, right? So these are the methods of research that we need to understand. So now let's uh, let's go back to this table in which we were studying the types of research. This diagram. This diagram is very, very important, as I've already told you that, through this diagram you will be able to identify that which method you are actually going to study to use when you are going to do a particular kind of research. Now I'm going to discuss one method that is not mentioned here in the slide, but we all know that we use questionnaire method also whenever we are, and schedules also when we are collecting quantitative research. Now, what are these questionnaires and what are these schedules? See, questionnaires are very, very specific document that carries information about your particular research. Okay, they are very specific document that carry information about the particular research. For example, if you are doing a study on customer satisfaction, then all the questions will be focused on customer satisfaction in a particular document, right? For example, we will find out the variables, that what are the variables of customer satisfaction, dimensions of customer satisfaction, and we will design those questions on those specific variables, and we will put them on some kind of a scale, because this is definitely a qualitative study, so we cannot measure the customer satisfaction accurately, but yes, we can somewhere at up to some point we can quantify that whether the customers are satisfied with that particular product or they are not satisfied to take a particular product, right? So we have this cervical model. I'm giving you examples so that you can relate in your mind. We have cervical model, a model that is given by a lot of scientists who are doing study on service quality. So that model has to be implemented. That model has to be used when we are using a particular method to study customer satisfaction, or maybe service quality of a hospital, of a hotel, of a any saloon, any spa, or any educational institute. We can use a statistical model very easily. It's a very effective model to study. So what do we do in a questionnaire? In a questionnaire, we design questions which are focusing particularly on that particular area. What what particular area we are talking about? We are talking about customer satisfaction. Okay, so I think these are the methods that I wanted you to understand, right? Thank you so much. I think I have covered all the points in customer